up to 1/100th of a millimeter. Taut wires cut across the tower to measure any distortion in the structure. 3 pendulums, encased in gray tubes, track any shift in the tower's center. They hang from the 7th level down to the 1st floor. After 2 years, the team studying the tower still couldn't agree on how to fix it, but they were ready to try some temporary solutions. Their first task was to strengthen the tower at its weakest point, the critical zone.
The inclination of the tower is creating very high compression on this side because the tower is inclined in this direction. This edge is really the position in which the compression stress is the highest one. So the failure, the collapse would begin certainly in this position if would happen.
Workers wrapped a belt of plastic-covered steel cables around the tower's 2nd story in an effort to keep the cracks from widening further. The operation went smoothly. The band of steel was discreet enough not to arouse any protest. Then, over the course of 6 months, 600 tons of lead weights were methodically added to the base of the north side to keep the lean from getting worse. The first lead weight was added on July 13, 1993. Nervous engineers recorded every step of the process with their own cameras. Tests were carried out to calculate how the tower was reacting to the lead weights. But nothing is certain with a building that is so unique.
We put the first lead weight on and we got a positive response because it was by no means certain that we would. It was very nerve-wracking. The tension was really very high indeed.
After the last weight was added, monitors registered a northward movement of almost an inch. The intervention had been a success. It was a historic moment. For the first time in 800 years, the Leaning Tower of Pisa moved back the other way. There was just one snag. The lead weights were an eyesore. Art experts protested. The people of Pisa complained. The weights had to go.
The lead weights are rather ugly, and in Italy they have a saying that anything temporary becomes permanent.
And so, the tower's engineers came up with a daring and complex plan, a plan that some feared would destroy the treasured tower. The plan to eliminate the weights holding the tower down was so controversial and so filled with danger that its outcome came to be known as Black September. The idea was to build a concrete ring around the tower's base from which 10 cables would be driven 50 meters underground to anchor the tower in place. Laying the concrete ring was a dangerous task. Workers would have to dig under the catino, the walkway around the base of the tower. The ground was full of water, and once digging started, the water might gush up. But the engineers in charge were confident they had a way around that. The ground would be frozen using liquid nitrogen. The frozen ground would form a physical barrier that would stop groundwater from flowing into the shallow excavation the concrete ring would be built in. Before the freeze started, engineers came across something puzzling. There was already a concrete ring in the ground, and it was attached to the tower. Engineers guessed that it dated back to the 1800s. There was nothing about this ring in historical records, but it seemed safe to go ahead. On September 7th, workers started freezing the ground.
They made some holes around the tower, and inside these holes they put liquid nitrogen, practically transforming all the ground underneath the tower into a freezer.
For 36 hours, liquid nitrogen was pumped into the soil. At first, the tower didn't react. Then, overnight, the tower suddenly moved 1/16 of an inch, an amount almost equal to what the tower moves in a year.
As we froze the ground, the ice reacted against this concrete in the ground and caused the tower to move adversely. And as soon as that happened, we stopped the job.
When the water in the soil froze, it expanded. The expanded soil pushed the concrete ring down, leaving a gap between the tower and the ring. Once the soil defrosted, the tower sank down into the space and lurched further south.
I was extremely worried, and this was really a very, very difficult week. We